name is Kandy Crosby-Hastings. This is a video discussion board for U.S. History 530 at Liberty University. For this assignment, I have chosen to study Jerry Falwell. Though he was a controversial figure, as we will see throughout this presentation, I, for one, have to be thankful for his vision of Liberty University. I'm currently working on my 4th degree through this university. According to the article, A Tale of Two Baptists, Jimmy Carter and Jerry Falwell, by J. Brooks Flippin, Jerry Falwell was born in 1924 to a devout Baptist mother. As Dr. Roger Schultz of Liberty University reminds, however, Jerry Falwell's mother was very pious, but his father was agnostic. In fact, one of Falwell's early memories was of his father killing his uncle in the bootlegging business. It was while in college that Falwell came to know Christ as Savior. He went on to preach and to found Thomas Road Baptist Church and what would become Liberty University, both in Lynchburg, Virginia. It was not his church or his college, however, that brought controversy for Jerry Falwell. It was often his controversial political viewpoints that did so. A 2007 article by the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education Foundation entitled Jerry Layman Falwell, Rest in Peace, that reads, Jerry Falwell, the famed televangelist and racial bigot who in 1979 founded the Moral Majority, died this past May from a heart attack in his office at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. He was 73 years old. The article refers to his staunch opposition to the 1954 case Brown versus the Board of Education. Here I have pictured some photos from the National Historic Site for Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. This is a photo of Monroe School, which was originally a black school prior to this case. This photo shows a popular idea of this era that races were separate but equal. The article quotes Falwell as saying Chief Justice Warren and his associates did not recognize that God's will was for races to be separate. God had drawn a line that we should not cross. People are meant to be separated by race. Falwell also, according to Dr. Schultz, saw no need to become involved in the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which, as we also see pictured here, was a legacy of the Brown versus the Board of Education decision. Here we see a button pictured of Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream. In his autobiography, simply titled Falwell, an autobiography, Jerry Falwell wrote that there were many issues going on in the 1960s. There were Vietnam protests, there were protests for the legalization of marijuana, and several others. Though he agreed with some, he wrote, he had been taught that Christians should not become involved in politics, and therefore he stayed silent. However, the 1973 court case, Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion, changed his mind. In his autobiography, he describes his sorrow over the thought of how many thousands or millions of unborn babies being killed. In his own words, he brought this sorrow to his family, and it was the words of his 7-year-old son at that time asking him why he did not do something about this that spurred him to action. According to the article, The Moral Majority in Middletown by Joseph B. Tamney and Stephen D. Johnson, Jerry Falwell formed the Moral Majority in 1979 as a political group, not as a religious group. He viewed his stand against abortion, drug trafficking, and pornography as being pro-American. The Moral Majority brought to light Falwell's beliefs about these issues, including abortion, feminism, liberalism, homosexuality, secular humanism. According to Ted G. Jalen's article, Politicized Group Identification, the case of fundamentalism, when he spoke of these issues in his televangelism, Christians everywhere listened and sided with the Moral Majority. Jalen considers this an example of the dominant group of fundamentalist Christians against what he calls the out-group or the subordinate group. The 1980 presidential elections really put the Moral Majority in action, according to Tamney and Johnson. Also, Joe L. Kingelow describes in the article Preparing a Place for the Righteous, Reagan Education and the New Right, of how Ronald Reagan appealed to fundamentalist Christians in this election. At a meeting with the Moral Right, he appealed to fundamentalist zeal by condemning anti-Christian government action. He personally met with Falwell and promised that he would stand up for the major concerns of Christians everywhere. However, as David John Marley points out in Ronald Reagan and the Splintering Christian Right, as president, Ronald Reagan's personal views did not necessarily translate into laws in his 2 terms in office. Leaders such as Jerry Falwell realized that there was a difference between having an individual support their movement and having their agendas actually made into law. At the same time, Falwell was again under the racial radar for not supporting South African social rights activist Bishop Desmond Tutu. A 1985 interview with Transformation magazine reveals that Falwell believed that Tutu's actions were not best for South Africa's economy. Falwell also writes in his autobiography of how his beliefs in politics evolved into the establishment of the first Liberty Godparent home. He states that growing up he heard so much criticism of the liberal social gospel movement that he never really thought about Jesus' command to feed the hungry. It was a reporter's question challenging his anti-abortion stance that spurred him into action to help not only politically but also morally and socially. Marley points out that Jerry Falwell became less and less involved in politics as the 80s wore on, and of course the moral majority disbanded in the early 90s. However, as a quote from his autobiography points out, Falwell never lost the belief that what makes a good Christian makes a good citizen.